Hi everyone. I'm here with Kyungmi Shin to make this video for all of you to do a walkthrough of her exhibition. We just wanted to introduce her, and she's going to actually take it from here. And you're not going to see her face during the walkthrough because she's going to be holding the camera so she can show you all the details and introduce her beautiful exhibition. So we're so grateful to Kyungmi for all of the work that she's done in putting this exhibition together, and I can't wait for you guys all to see it. I know you're going to absolutely love it. So.
Thank you, Cassandra. Hello, everyone. I'm Kyungmi, and I'm going to flip the camera so you can see the work and I could talk about the exhibit. So there you go. There you go. So this is the first room. When you enter the exhibit, there's a title wall. And the title of the whole exhibit is Father Crosses the Ocean, and was inspired, the whole exhibit was inspired by my father's life and kind of how his life intersects this different historical and cultural and colonial relationships. So just to talk about the exhibit overall, exhibit layout, this first area I have busts of my father, which I created in Jingdezhen, China, paired with oval porcelain tile wall pieces. And then I also have 4 large painted photo images, one here, and you can see another one behind that wall over there. So on this side are portrait busts of my father and other objects centered around it. And then on the other side, I have self-portrait busts of myself. You can see here along the 2 dividing walls as well as the wall at the end. And again, painted photo works, one here and another one is on the other side. So kind of to go back to this area, the busts were created in Jingdezhen, and these are multiple casts of these busts. And what I'm doing here is juxtaposing the portrait bust with the porcelain tiles with the patterns. These are transfer patterns. The off-the-shelf transfer patterns that I picked up in Jingdezhen, which has a lot of influence of the cross-references or cross-influences with the European patterns. You could kind of see how these are used in a lot of it is being used in European decorative objects, and it really has a cross kind of cultural reference relationship, which is a long story. But also at the center of the tile are these figures. In this particular one, I have a siren figure that I took from a medieval manuscript illumination, and juxtaposed here on my father's bust, I have a pattern that was made from a figure of a crusader, kind of in a fighting position. And so all the other busts have that kind of relationships between the oval tiles.
Do you want to explain your father's relationship to Christianity a little bit?
Oh, that's a good point, yeah. So the reason why I was interested in kind of looking at the Christian symbols was because my father was a Christian minister, spent 50-some years as a minister. And so it's been something that I've been dealing with in my whole life, as you could imagine. So I wanted to kind of investigate that relationship between my father's position as an Asian man and in Korea, and then later in the US, and how that came about, how and why is he a Christian minister instead of a Buddhist monk or something? It's where the majority of the population is Buddhist. So this kind of exhibit talks or investigates these different cultural relationships that is, spurred by political, economical, and religious kind of relationships. So I'm holding my phone over this this painted photo which shows a group photo of a group of young ministers, including my father, who is at this on the far in the middle here. And on top of it, I have an illumination from a medieval manuscript that kind of shows the various colonial and political and kind of religious relationships, which I thought was really interesting. You see the powerful kings and bishops here. There's a scene of war, dead soldiers, and then there's a boat that's about to embark on a journey with a priest on the board, aboard, and then you see these two figures who look like merchant class. So I used this boat image as a motif in several different places, including this pairing here. This, so I have the same design here against the transfer pattern, and I also have the same design here on the portrait bust of my father. And this particular juxtaposition.
Yeah, no, I thought that would be good also because you mentioned Jane Shin before, to give a little explanation of that and talk about this piece.
Yeah, so I think this, I mentioned briefly that the portrait busts were done in Jingdezhen, China, and this was a kind of amazing experience to create artwork in Jingdezhen because of its thousands of history of producing porcelain and hundreds of years of exporting to Europe, which created the huge, China fever in Europe.
Yeah, just to be really clear, Jingdezhen is a city in China.
Correct, I'm sorry.
And so Kyungmi was actually invited to have an artist residency there in China. Was that last year, right?
Month of October, but it feels like eons ago.
But anyway, so much of this work in this exhibition, she was able to make while she was at that residency in China, which happens to be this incredible, famous, historic place for making porcelain. So just to clarify that point.
Thank you.
Anyways, carry on.
Yeah, so I think the kind of looking at the history of Jingdezhen and looking at that relationship was really powerful for me. So here, on the mirror, what I did was to put a stencil of the letter written by the priest who was sent to Jingdezhen from France to proselytize, but also to kind of figure out the secrets of the porcelain production. So what I did was I took the letter he wrote back home and transcribed to here. It's just a very small section of it, but I have a translation on the wall as well. Juxtaposed against it are these porcelain flowers I made at my LA studio. These are opium flowers, and these are kind of introduced here to talk about the relationship between the West and China, and how the opium became a tool for the West, the economic kind of powers to try to control China because of hundreds of years of economic trade imbalance. Europe was frustrated and they were trying to force opium on China to, try to create some way of making a profit. And of course, it led to a huge, opium war, which China lost, and then the rest is history. But it's a very complex history, but I wanted to kind of talk about how these religion, economics, politics, how closely it is linked, and it still is today, right? Yeah. So anyway, this is the one side, and I could head over to the other side, kind of start talking about the area where I have self-portraits and photo collages. So again, here you could see a photo collage of a photograph of my father from the 60s, and on top of it is a drawing of a chinoiserie. Drawing. Another big topic. So the chinoiserie is a kind of a style of decorative art, as well as paintings and objects. And after China, objects from China became really popular, like porcelain and also I think the furniture wood panels from Japan was also really popular. And what the French and the Europeans started to do was to combine elements from China and started to introduce the elements of Baroque or Rococo decorative elements. And then also the artists, European artists, started to make objects of their own that imitated Chinese style. So this kind of combination of different approaches to Chinese style is called chinoiserie. There's a lot more complexity to it. But so this particular pattern that you see here is a decorative arts pattern. But in another piece that I use, the background piece is I'll go to it later, but painting by Jean-François Boucher, who was a court painter to I think Louis XV. But he was focused on chinoiserie for 12 years because it was so popular. You could imagine how much in demand it was for him to be focused on it for 12 years. So here there's a photo, painted photo image, again, juxtaposition of my self-portrait with porcelain tile with illustrations from the narratives from the Journey to the West, which features a very famous Monkey King character, which I'm using in my works. But I'm going to kind of revisit that in a bit and just kind of go through these. These are all Celadon glazed objects with self-portraits, porcelain opium flowers, and some other elements. So these are a combination of objects I made in Jingdezhen and in Los Angeles. And here, these set of 3 plates show landscape, garden landscape, or garden design of in China. These are from Yu Garden in Shanghai. I'm gonna move over to them. So I think I heard that there might be a programming regarding Buddhism, and so I wanted to talk a little bit about the relationship to these panels, porcelain panels on the wall are showing these illustrations from a very famous story called Journey to the West, which was based on the life of an actual historical monk who was one of the first monks who went to China and brought a lot of Buddhist texts and translated it from Indian, Hindi or Sanskrit to Chinese, and brought a lot of Buddhist information. So he is a very important character. So about 1,000 years later, his story was rewritten as a novel called Journey to the West. And in this novel, there's a lot of mythological characters were introduced, including the Tripmaster monkey, which is or Monkey King, who had superpower but was a very kind of immature character. So kind of gets in all sorts of trouble. So I wanted to kind of introduce this narrative to this exhibit because I was looking at the Monkey King character as a very human, flawed character. I'm kind of also making maybe a comparison of myself to the character, but it is a spiritual quest. And so a lot of these illustrations here, including the Buddha's palm, is in the narrative of the story, where here the Monkey King challenges Buddha because he wants to become a deity, and he thinks he deserves to be a deity instead of just a superhero. And so Buddha says, okay, if you are able to travel far enough to get away from outside of my hand, you can become a god. So Monkey King, who travels on a really fast cloud, he zooms away and travels for a day, and he reaches this mountain, and he decided, oh, this must be the end of the world. So he pees and then makes a big graffiti like a Monkey King was here. And then he, comes back to Buddha and say, "Hey, I've done it. I went all the way out and you weren't there." And Buddha showed him his hand, and on his hand was his graffiti. So he did not win the bat and could not become a deity. So I think this is a kind of metaphor about how the foolish, the human, arrogance, and we think we are better than God, and we're not, or things like that. And what was ironic was I remember growing up, in a Christian minister's household. I had a lot of questions to my father about how do you know this is truth and blah blah blah. And this was the metaphor my father used, the Buddha's hand, which was really interesting. But he didn't say it was Buddha's hand, but his metaphor was, if we're inside of this hand, you cannot comprehend the logic that it's beyond it, so we have to accept it. That was his logic. But it was so embedded in this kind of,
You never
Asian.
told me that detail before, that your father told you that story.
I don't think, I never, too many details, right? So anyways, if you actually kind of Google and look up the story of Journey to the West, you'll find a lot of information. So all the narratives on my side, it's really focused on the Monkey King's journey, and here the Son Wukong, the Monkey King, on his lightning fast cloud, and here is the image of Monkey King fighting a monster. So the Journey to the West has lots of stories of these king characters fighting against the monsters and demons and things like that. And lastly, the painted photo image. And in the background is the painting by Jean-François Boucher, which I mentioned earlier. And I have juxtaposed a picnic scene from the 60s of my father and his friends. So you could also hear a little bit more about this details from the audio guide if you're interested.
Do you want to just mention what you made the paintings with on top of it?
Oh, I am. So the way I created this was I created this juxtaposition on Photoshop, and then the outlines were painted out with acrylic paint. So I don't know if you could really see the paint here. It's a very tiny line, so it was a very slow process. So it's just to kind of make it more graphic. I added those. I wanted a hand painted element on it. I think that's about it. But
fantastic.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, guys. Bye.